Amid painful losses, a ballet teacher goes through a difficult time after losing a student in a tragic way, and shortly after suffers a stroke. During her hospitalization, she has unusual experiences, such as memory loss, strange sensations, and episodes where she believes she leaves her own body. While the doctors try to understand what is happening, she senses presences, hears voices, and feels that she is being taken to different places. What she didn't know is that, through 2 near-death experiences, these places were not just in her mind, but were part of a real experience that allowed her to continue her life on Earth. Hello, I'm Marcus, and it's a pleasure to have you here at Beyond the Life We Live. I hope you feel at home and absorb the lesson from the story we're about to share. By the way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it's very important to us and helps bring more impactful stories to you. Simone was a ballet teacher in 2011, working on a project with children in a small city. In February of that year, a traumatic event changed her life. One of her students, whom she had been preparing to take an exam at the ballet school, disappeared. A few days later, a shock. They found her lifeless in a hotel. This deeply affected Simone, who lost almost 8 kilograms. She couldn't sleep or eat properly, and because of that, she began treatment with a psychologist. That same year, Simone had to undergo surgery to remove a small tumor under her eye. What she didn't know was that she had suffered a stroke between February and March. However, the symptoms only began to appear months later, coinciding with her post-surgery recovery. At first, her family believed that the symptoms, which included intense headaches, one side of her face being extremely cold and the other hot, were consequences of the surgery. The symptoms kept getting worse until Simone started having memory lapses, where she began seeing people she didn't know talking to her on the street. This problem became so intense that she had to be hospitalized. On her first night at the hospital alone, she had a strange experience. She felt someone knocking on the door and heard a voice saying,
"There is someone here in this hospital taking care of you."
Shortly after, the same voice came back, saying,
"There are 2 people here in this hospital taking care of you, the father and me."
The third time, the voice said,
"There are 3 people here in this hospital taking care of you, the father, the son, and me."
The next day, the psychologist and doctors spoke with Simone's mother, explaining that she was suffering from retrograde amnesia. This meant her past was gradually disappearing, and she could only remember the immediate present. The curious detail here is that during the night, she had dreamed of the same voice that spoke to her, showing faces of family members and saying that only those who truly cared for her would be allowed to enter the hospital. A few days later, transferred to an intensive care center, a place where she would be monitored 24 hours a day, the idea of inducing her into a coma came up. After a few days in that place, she felt a strong pain in her chest and had her first near-death experience. Feeling herself being pulled toward the hospital ceiling, rising through the clouds until reaching a place with a very bright light where there was a shining portal. At this portal, Simone felt a very strong presence already waiting for her. She couldn't see a defined shape, but she knew someone was there. The most impressive thing was that when she asked questions mentally, she realized the answers were received instantly, without needing to use her voice. Then she began to hear music so beautiful that she said she had never heard anything like it on Earth, and from that moment on, she started to feel like part of that whole, and that whole became part of her. Then she noticed herself returning to her body as she saw several nurses and doctors by her side. One of them calmed her down, telling her that everything was fine, that she was being monitored. Later, she found out she had suffered a cardiopulmonary arrest and that the monitor tracking her heartbeat had dropped to 0. On another night, around 3 a.m., Simone noticed a dark shape in her room. This shape grew larger, taking on an undefined black and transparent form. The figure then passed by each bed, and wherever it went, the patients would take their final breath. Believing she had hallucinated, the real surprise came the next day when she learned that there had actually been deaths that night. She remembers that, when the shadow approached her, she pulled the blanket over her head and began reciting the psalm her mother had taught her. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." The shadow tried to get closer, but it seemed that something was stopping it from approaching. After a few moments, it disappeared. Meanwhile, the doctors were planning a delicate surgery to treat the rare stroke that was putting Simone's life at risk. Her parents were called to sign the documents, as there was no guarantee she would survive the operation. In the middle of all this tension, Simone began to feel the left side of her body go numb. The doctors acted quickly, administered medication, and she fell asleep. In the early hours of the following morning, she again felt a sharp pain in her chest. One of the staff nearby noticed her skin color was changing. The pain intensified until Simone could no longer breathe, beginning her second near-death experience. Once again, she left her body and went to that same place of intense light. This time, upon arriving, she realized she didn't want to go back. The presence was waiting for her and asked,
"Do you remember that? 5 minutes ago, you asked me not to take you because your mother would suffer too much."
With that, she was taken to different places. First, she hovered above the clouds. Then, she found herself sitting on top of the earth, watching the feet of the presence touching the ground. She visited many places, and at one point, she found herself in her mother's room. She tried to touch her, but her hand passed right through, realizing she was in another plane. Then she heard conversations inside houses, witnessed arguments, prayers, and everyday conversations. She also saw herself entering and exiting an airport and walking through a place full of flags from various countries. The presence explained that these would be places she would still visit. When she returned to her body in the hospital, Simone was informed that she had suffered another cardiopulmonary arrest. The next day, while getting ready to take a shower, she heard the voice again.
"I scheduled your surgery for today. This time, it won't be done by anyone from here. I will do it myself."
Frightened, Simone went back to bed and fell asleep. Hours later, she was awakened by the doctors, who informed her that they would perform a test before the surgery. Still confused, she insisted she wouldn't need the test because, according to her, she had already been operated on, but no one understood what she meant. On Sunday, just as she had predicted, the ambulance arrived at 1 p.m. to take her. After the test, the doctors, including a foreign specialist, were stunned. In the area where they had planned to operate, the test showed an internal scar. There were no external marks on her scalp, only that evidence inside her skull. Unable to explain what had happened, the doctors decided to cancel the surgery and simply monitor her. To everyone's surprise, Simone's condition gradually improved until she was discharged. However, upon returning home, she faced a new challenge. She didn't recognize her own home, nor her husband, parents, or neighbors. She thought she was in a temporary place, part of her treatment, and believed she would one day return to her real home. Strangely, that feeling never completely disappeared. Continuing her treatment, she tried to return to normal life. After some time, a neurologist finally made the diagnosis. She had suffered demyelination in the right parietal region of her brain, something similar to the onset of multiple sclerosis, a degenerative disease with no cure. The doctor, with no treatment options, simply wished her good luck. Determined, Simone had to relearn many things. She went back to studying dance, completed her second college degree, and learned to drive again. During her driving lessons, she met a young man who recognized her and mentioned that they had both passed the exam for the police together. Confused, she asked her mother, who confirmed the story and explained that, at the time, she didn't allow her daughter to take the job because she didn't want a police officer in the family. From the near-death experiences that had brought her in contact with the spiritual world to the inexplicable surgery without medical intervention, Simone moved forward. Nearly 2 years after her mother's passing, she was still studying to fulfill the promise she had made, to make her dream of becoming a police officer come true.